afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from around the world. Thank you for being here. My name is Yetmir Yashari, and I'll be your moderator for today's webinar, Harmonizing Standards for Digital Trust, Bridging IEC 62443, ISO IEC 42001, and ISO IEC 2701. We're thrilled to dive into this important topic and even more delighted to be joined by our speaker, Mr. Stein Mollerhaug. Before we get started, I'd like to inform the audience that this session will be recorded and will be posted on our website and YouTube channel, along with the slides of the presentation. And an attestation of webinar completion worth 1 CBT credit will be issued within 7 days to all attendees who participate in at least 60% of the live session. Furthermore, we encourage you to engage throughout by submitting your questions using the Q&A feature in the questions box or the chat box, and we will address as many as we can during the Q&A segment in the end. Now, without further ado, let's get started. I'm going to hand it over to our speaker, Stein.
Hello and good afternoon, as it is here in Oslo. Hope you are having a good day. This is a very important topic, and I put together some thoughts about this. Some of this is directly from the standard. Some of it is my own reflections. So let's just dive in and look at where we can harmonize a bit between 27001, 42001, and 62443, because all these standards will be playing together. Now, the agenda here, just a second. Sorry, the slide did not advance as it was supposed to do. Just a second. Yeah. So we are going to look into what can be harmonized and what is outside the current standard, but still needs some level of harmonizing, and why we need that level of harmonizing. Some strange things are happening here. Sorry for that. Yeah, so we're back here. There are things that can be harmonized easily. There are some things that can't easily be harmonized, but we still need to have a look at this in context. We will see IT systems controlling OT environments. We see artificial intelligence systems interacting with both IT and OT systems, and whatever we can harmonize should contribute to making things more secure and more consistent. So harmonization matters for very obvious reasons. We are converging IT, OT, and AI systems. That means that we share risks, and if we don't harmonize between the different environments, we actually now risk getting fragmented assurance. So we can have high assurance in one area and little or no assurance in another area, and a problem in one of the three areas can transfer easily to the others. So harmonization is important. Also, it is worth noticing that compliance is not the same as confidence in the correct working of the systems. When it comes to digital trust, it depends on us, on consistent human intent to be controlling the processes. And that may be getting a little more difficult as we progress now. So I've been in the computer industry for quite a number of years, actually more than 40 years. I've soon been 40 years in computer security. I learned a few things over the years. First of all, is if you have an ad hoc system and more than one person operates it, that is the same as random execution, which transfers very easily to lack of control. So that's one of the key messages. We need to have a systematic approach to this. We need to have the level of confidence, the level of documentation, the level of compliance that allows more than one person to be executing the procedures in a reproducible manner. We also seen that OT systems Without proper visibility and guidance and governance, they risk human life and health. There has been multiple examples of this. The worst one was probably Bhopal in India, where OT systems created mass deaths among the people around the factory. I've also observed that new technology will appear all the times. It changes the rule of the game. But whenever there's new technology coming out, people are screaming that, oh, this will be the end of, and this will be so bad. And in the end, we turn out to adapt. We actually manage the new technology. And because what's seen as disruptive today is probably going to be commonplace tomorrow. So let's have a little look at the most important security principle of them all, which is the CISSP principle. We need to keep it simple. We can't overcomplicate things. And when we harmonize different standards and implementation of different standards, we are on the right path to keeping things simple. So proper use of standard will lead to systematic approach, will then possibly lead to control. But on the opposite side, if there's a lack of standards, we will have fragmented defenses, and that will lead to loss of control. So in all of this, with all the complex technology, with all the interactions, with the technology we don't quite understand yet, AI, we still need some standards. We need standard systematic approaches, and we need to be in control as human beings. There's something called the harmonization chain, which is basically progressing like this. We start out with an intention to harmonize. When we do so, we simplify. When we simplify, we start achieving operational efficiency, and as a net result, we get better security across our systems. So that's the harmonization chain. We want systems to be harmonized to the degree it is possible, and simply because the simpler we can make the implementations, the higher the chance that they will work. But harmonization strengths. AI autonomy and drift is upsetting our traditional audit cycles. We are talking also about self-replication and what we call emergent logic, which can lead to uncontrolled change. By emergent logic, we mean logic that is formulating, developing, and modifying itself. One of the key issues we have is there can be a divergence now between efficiency, safety, fairness. And we need to control this by actually getting control over the key decisions that are made. And we need to avoid that too many decisions are made without explicit input from us. So if we look at the three standards now, we are looking at 27001. Here we have the way the standard is built up. We have clauses 1 to 3. They say very little. They say about scope, references, and terms, but there are no requirements in clauses 1 to 3 of 27001. In clauses 4 to 10, there is management system requirements. This is where we're getting in the plan, do, check, act process. And then we have Annex A, which is 93 security controls that are integrated via a statement of applicability and under the control of the management system of clauses 4 to 10. If we look at ISA 62443, that is not just one standard, by the way. That's a collection of standards. If we look at part 1.1, we have concepts and terminology. Matches pretty well with clauses 1 to 3 of 27001. If we look at part 2.1, we are looking at the management system for asset owners, which is a little scaled down compared to the management system in general of 27001, but very focused on the OT environment. Then we have part 3.2, where we have risk assessment and security levels being described. And part 3.3, we have system security requirements, where we have find the 7 foundational requirements. If we jump over to ISO 42001, it follows the structure as the other management standards for clauses 4 to 10. So there it is very similar. And the management system that you implement under ISO 27001 can be used also as a management system for ISO 42001. The same can be said, by the way, for ISO 62443. We can apply as one management system across these standards. Now, what ISO 42001 adds is adding requirements for transparency, accountability, and human oversight. That sounds pretty good, but we will look a bit more into this and see what that means in practice. Annex A has AI-specific controls to handle bias, data governance, and explainability, which is a new term that you probably haven't seen in 27001 and 62443. Explainability, that means that when the AI comes up with a solution, it should be possible for us to explain how AI arrived at that solution or conclusion. So this is what the standards offers here. And of course, this goes a long way in actually building security around 42001, but unfortunately, it doesn't go the whole way. So let's have a little look at the realism of the effective controls in 42001. Transparency, yeah. Transparency works where model purpose and data sources are known. So it describes processes, but it does not address the inner logic of evolving models, self-learning models. There is no coverage for that. So 42001 offers governance transparency, but it doesn't offer algorithmic transparency. That is insight into how the algorithms work behind the scenes. Now, accountability, that assigns responsibility to management, not to algorithms. So that's a good thing. It's managers responsible. You can't blame the algorithm. You can't say the car crashed me, because you are management when you are behind the steering wheel of the car. It does create audit trail of what the intent of the system is, but it doesn't create an audit trail of every autonomous act that contributes to the results. Now, the problem here is that traceability will weaken as AI self-learns and distributes its decisions onto several systems. So on the accountability side, we are already seeing that we are a bit behind the curve and don't really have a clear idea how we're going to get in front of the curve when it comes to accountability. When it comes to human oversight, there are requirements in the standard. Oversight depends on one thing: time to act before the system does. That's the key thing. You could, for example, have an AI system that controls an industrial control environment, which will work very well, but then suddenly something goes wrong. It arrives at the wrong conclusion. It is not quite correct. And as a result of that, you could have things happening faster than humans can react. So time to react before the system does is a critical thing. We will get further behind the curve on this one, because as AI decisions start outpacing what we understand, AI comes up with some fantastic new results. We verify them, we see that these results are actually real. They are contributing to our business, they are contributing to our lives, but we don't quite understand how the AI arrived at this. And we are shifting from prevention, really, when it comes to human oversight, into looking at things in retrospect after they have happened. I'm not going to go into hallucinations and all the other stuff with AI, simply because that's something for a different speech. But keep this in mind that yes, we have controls in 42001. We absolutely need those controls, but we have to question the effectiveness of these controls. We have to be alert that the system may outpace us, and we need to start looking into strategies on how to handle this. Another point there is when controls stop working. So there I decided to operate with 4 different zones. This human, the human governed zone. Here we have standards, they guide the intent. We have policies that guide the execution, and we have accountability related back to people. So in the human governed zone, humans approve, monitor, and interpret what the AI is producing. The controls work because it's very easy to see the cause and the effect. We can see how these match up. We have then the transition zone, and now AI is learning, adapting, and acting faster than our oversight cycles. So auditability of the solution decreases. We still govern the process, but we cannot no longer govern each individual decision in the process. We use standards to measure structure, but we don't really have control over emergent behavior. Next zone here will be the autonomous zone, where AI operates beyond direct human comprehension or control. So decision logic changes faster than our governance updates. So therefore, accountability just becomes symbolic. We document, we don't direct. So this is what some people would say, this is where the AI takes over. So these are the 3 zones that we have, different approaches to the use of AI, different degree of human control. Human control is highest in the human governed zone and can be non-existent in the autonomous zone. So what does 42001 provide? It's a framework for governance, but not a framework for containment of the AI solutions. So beyond the limit line, leadership must rely on engagement, ethics, and continuous validation, not a checklist. Static assurance is out the window here. So we have to be aware that, yeah, we need the controls of 42001. They are a great starting point, but we also need to move way beyond the controls of 42001. So we have a little transition slide here, because now we have dug into 42001. It's new, that's why we have talked a lot about it, but let's now relate this back to the other standards. Yeah, first of all, we have a common management structure, a common management logic, plan, do, check, act for both 62443, 27001, and 42001. So that's the good part. As I say, this is the foundation that we're laying down, where we will have to apply other mechanisms later. So the 3 standards has one logic, but they have different focus. 27001 is about effectiveness in IT operations, integrity, and confidentiality. In 62443, the key weight is on safety and reliability. And in 42001, the key focus is on accountability and transparency of the new solutions that we are starting to apply. So let's compare here a bit, right? These are the clauses of 27001 and actually the clauses of 42001 from the management system. So these are the clauses 4 to 10. So in clause 4, it is the context of the organization where we define ISMS boundaries and stakeholders. This can be found in the industrial automation and control systems in the documents 1.1 and 2.1, where we're talking about scope and zones. In 42001, we in clause 4, we define the AI purpose and the system boundaries. And the tension point here is how do we define context when IT, OT, and AI share both physical and cognitive space? Cognitive space, use that phrase a little loosely here, but that basically means they are now interacting on the same level. The AI system gets data from the IT system, feeds data to the OT system, and it is directly affecting the production. So that's what's in the context. Then we have the leadership, where 27001 talks about policy, roles, accountability. In 62443, in 2.1 and 2.4, we talk about roles, authority, and responsibility, very much the same. And in 42001, we are talking about leadership and ethics clauses. So what we don't define here in terms of any of these is what is ethical leadership when it comes to decisions and delegation of decisions to algorithms. Clause 6 requires planning, which is risk management and objectives in 27001. It is 3.2 and 3.3 service levels plus threat modeling in 62443, and it's risk and opportunity for AI in 42001. So can we treat AI risk like any other cybersecurity risk? I will give you a little hint. The answer is no. There are some commonalities, but there are also things we have to treat differently. In 7 support, we are talking in 27001 about competency, awareness, and communication. In 62443, we are talking about in the documents 2.1 and 3.2, we're talking about awareness and training. In 42001, we are again talking about competency and data integrity. That's the focus there. And then we have this question, human competency versus algorithmic competency, which fails first. That is the key question to be asking there. Moving on to operation, we are talking about control implementation in 27001. In 3.3, we're talking about security requirements and foundational requirements. In 42001, we're talking about operational control of AI. So what is operation when AI acts autonomously? We're going to get back to that one a little. In 9, we're talking about performance, and we're talking about improvement in 10, so I chose to merge these two here. In 27001, we're talking about audits and continuous improvement. In 62443, in 2.1 and 2.4, we're talking about performance and improvement. And in 42001, we're talking about monitoring and explainability, and we're talking about having improvement loops in place. Key thing here is, can we audit an algorithm's ethics? And who learns faster, us or machines? So that is a key dilemma here. We cannot blindly trust AI, but in very many cases, we will be blindly trusting AI. That's a prediction from my side. So let's look at the harmonizable domains where we can put together a jigsaw puzzle. With context and scope, we have a unified boundary definition in all the standards, leadership and roles, clear accountability anchored in top management in all the standards, risk and opportunity. We have shared taxonomy, so we have shared phrases We have shared ways of looking at risk. And when it comes to operational controls, we can cross-map the foundational requirements of 62443 with Annex A of 42001 and the Annex A of 27001 and the controls of 42001. So we can measure and we can have a self-improving system through one PDCA loop, but that is just the basis of it. What comes now next is things we need to address specifically. So if we look at Annex A controls and summaries of ISO 42001, this is not the full thing. This is just a brief extract of it. But they are talking about controls to avoid bias. They're talking about controls to govern the data. They're also talking about constantly retraining. They are also pointing out that explainability is limited for deep or emergent architectures. So in many cases, the AI will reach a decision that in some cases may be hard to explain. So 42001 governs the processes of ethical intent, but it doesn't talk about conscience of AI. So 42001 is about intent, not about what's actually happening. Transparency, accountability, and oversight. It is still a human discipline, but the moment we start disconnecting, then we lose control, we lose the oversight. Accountability gets watered out, transparency gets non-existent. So on top of the Annex A controls of 42001, we need human engagement, and we don't, quite honestly, we are not, in some cases, we may actually not know how we're going to get this. This is something we need to figure out. Which is sort of leading into the areas of AI specific. Because when it comes to AI, we have a very key question. Who decides, right? So who is deciding? Well, we build controls. We want these controls to enforce our decisions. We write standards. We want to formalize the intent of the AI system. But we've seen it, we will see more of it. AI begins to act on its own. Who decides what is right, what is safe, what is fair? We will not get away from actually implementing ethics systems into AI. But there's a problem with these ethics systems. What may be the right ethics for me may be the wrong ethics for another person. And then whose ethics standards are we going to be implementing? Are we going to have this as an option? What are we going to do? So what people fear with AI is what we call the invading AI. So the invading AI that takes over control over processes, that makes decisions without human oversight, with a speed beyond anything we human beings can understand. That is what we call the invading AI. And we still don't know how we're going to control this, whether we can control it, or whether we're just in it for the ride and have to let this just happen. I would be very unhappy if the latter was the option that we chose. But we don't have the answers at the moment on how we're going to effectively exercise control. And we really need to figure out things in this area. When it comes to AI, there are two sets of ethics. I'm not talking about ethics schools, but I'm talking about ethics principles. The first is the ethics of using AI systems at all. About which can lead to a lack of human responsibility and leadership, lack of oversight. In some cases, it may be a correct decision to say we're not going to be using AI. So that's the first thing. It's the ethics, whether we're going to use the AI systems at all for certain things. Then we have the ethics of the AI system, which is built into these algorithms and can potentially be producing bias. Especially can this be a problem when we have unsupervised learning. A group of hackers were quite busy when Google started indexing pictures, and they based themselves on the users actually looking at the pictures and saying what this was in the picture. And a group of hackers, they actually consistently said that pictures of cats were really pictures of dogs. And as a result, for a period of time, until this problem was discovered, it was very difficult to find cat pictures on Google. It was harmless, but it was a very, very clear demonstration on how systems through unsupervised learning can actually be led into totally wrong conclusions. When I started working with AI, we started making a lot of queries to the AI systems. And quite frankly, one of the queries I made really stood out. It was a very simple query. The query was, what side of the road does the majority of people in the world drive on? It didn't take long to figure that one out. It answered that 62.5% of the population in the world is driving on the right side of the road. The majority of the rest are driving on the left side of the road. Now it got my attention, you know. Okay, so who's driving in the middle of the road? It said then, for Iceland, I have no data. In Sweden, it's optional which side of the road you drive on. Okay, this was, it was trying to please us. It was trying to please me. It was trying to come up with the logic. What it failed to realize was that until I think it was 1968, Sweden were driving on the left side of the road. Then they stopped all traffic for 3 hours. And when they started again, they started driving on the right side of the road. In this particular case here, the AI system had obviously found records of people driving on the left side of the road and on the right side of the road. It tried to apply a logic to that situation. And the only logical explanation it could come up with was the fact that it was optional. Now, we all know what would happen if people could just pick which side of the road to drive on today. And it was obviously not something that was founded at all into a realistic situation. It was also obviously a very wrong conclusion. And had it been implemented in practice, it would have been pretty disastrous. So this was just an example as to why we have to make sure that we are not having the systems go outside what they can answer. I mean, if a human being was talking about something they had no clue about, we would consider that to be unethical. We should also build these ethics into the AI systems to have them, rather than have them try to figure out something to please us, actually verify very thoroughly that the logic behind what it comes up with is correct and that it doesn't have any side effects. So 42,001 addresses the use and governance of AI, leadership, risk, transparency. It does not prescribe any moral reasoning or empathy inside the AI itself. It doesn't suggest an ethics model. It doesn't suggest consequential assessments. It doesn't suggest any limitations that should be imposed on the AI system to avoid hallucination and trying to please you type of answers. Now, another example I have is something I have experience myself. You know, they are starting to build a lot of intelligence into the cars. And one of the nice functions is, of course, that I can just click a button and it will keep constant distance to the car in front of me. And if some obstacle appears, it's going to emergency brake and prevent me from driving into it. So I was driving on my way home from downtown Oslo, and it was quite strong wind. So I saw a cardboard box flying in the wind, and it would obviously be landing just in front of my car. It was an empty cardboard box. It was heavy traffic. I knew that slamming on the brakes maximum to avoid the box would be a bad thing to do. So as the driver of the car, I made the decision. I would just drive over the box. It would crumble under my car. It would not damage my car. So I was happily driving towards the box. Well, guess what? My car didn't think that was a good idea. So it slammed on the brakes to the absolute maximum. So you were not like hanging on to your seat belts, and it stopped dead in the middle of rush hour in heavy traffic in front of a cardboard box that could have done no damage to the car. So thankfully, nobody rear-ended me. But the key thing here is, if I had, who would be responsible in that situation if there had been a crash? Well, the traffic laws in Norway are pretty strict. They say basically if you rear-end somebody, it's your problem. But if somebody deliberately brakes hard to have somebody rear-end them to fix some dents on the back of the car, for example, then it's a different scenario. Well, I never touched the brake pedal. I was quite happy to drive over this cardboard box. The car was not happy. So the car overrode my decision. So that's a very simple scenario for AI. More complex scenarios, of course, exist, but the key thing here is that from these simple scenarios, we need to look into what went wrong in this situation. The problem was obviously that I had a situational awareness that the car did not have. So you could say that it's due to the limitations of the systems in the car, which could be, but the key thing here is that with my situational awareness, I made one decision, only to have the car overrule me. And that's probably not the way we want things to be working, right? So what we also very often now see with AI systems is that they can be very good within a specific area, but when it comes to having a total situational awareness, they will often lack, because they have lack of input, they have lack of sensors, and so on. So when we on a self-driving, or not self-driving, but the self-speed adjusting car with emergency braking can't really handle a simple cardboard box blowing in the wind, what can be the problems with other and more sophisticated systems? Okay, so that was an example. So let's look a little beyond the standard. Things that we need to worry about is autonomous actions, like the car suddenly braking. Who authorizes the outcomes? Who is responsible? Then we're getting into AI systems that can self-replicate. Now that can happen very fast. And the question now becomes, who is in control? Then we have the continuous learning. We have learned something, we know it today, but when does this certification expire? When do we have the AI systems have to relearn? When do we have to relearn? And all of this stuff here is not yet regulated, but we need to engage. And this is not about compliance, this is about engagement. So rounding up here, let's have a little look into something fundamental as ethics. what is ethics, because I mentioned it already. Now, ethics is not about standards. Absolutely not. It's not about laws. It's not about technology. Ethics is about the choices we make. And these choices will define us as persons. If we let AI choose, we are probably also letting AI define us. If we distance ourselves from the decisions that AI makes and say, oh, the AI system decided, what are we doing? We are walking away from accountability. So how do we hold an AI system accountable? Well, we don't. We created it. Accountability stays with us. So a few more paradoxes here. Leadership and responsibility. So if we surrender decisions to AI, we are actually removing what is making us humans, which is judgment, empathy, and accountability. If we are going to build our own ethics into AI systems, whose ethics? Different people, different religions, different countries have different ethics. Standards, they're useful. They can be harmonized. We talked about harmonization of the 3 standards, but AI security needs a lot more. And I wish I put the last sentence here in red, because this all starts with engagement. Now, a little paradox before we round off here. We have to let us talk a little bit about decisions void of empathy. So when a person acts without empathy, we call it psychopathy. But what do we call a decision made by a system that cannot feel empathy at all? That's a paradox. If an AI makes life-impacting decisions without empathy, without conscience, without moral awareness, haven't we in practice handed power over to something that behaves like a psychopath? I would argue that the danger is not that AI becomes evil, but that it becomes efficient in ways detached from human values. So this is, in my opinion, one of the core things to be addressing that is outside the scope of any standards. We need to make sure that if AI is going to make decisions, we must have accountability, and we must make sure that human values are also included in these decisions. Sorry, I forgot to advance that one. So the danger is not that AI becomes evil, but that it becomes so efficient and overrides human decency. Some final thoughts here. Leadership is not about controlling technology, it's about engaging and applying responsibility consciously and with purpose. If we let the machines lead, we may be forced to follow. And that's not because they're wiser, but it is because we stopped choosing and let the machines choose for us. So this is way beyond the current standards, but of course, standards are still needed. So we should start with looking into things from the standardized perspective, but we need to move way beyond the standardized perspective. A final slide on my personal reflection on AI. This is a statement back to 2023, where I said, I don't fear AI, but I fear how we may use AI. I think that goes to some of the essence of that second part of this presentation here, that we, on top of all the standards, we also need to think carefully about how we are going to use AI. We need to avoid having a psychopath making decisions on our behalf. And we really need to ensure that human decency, human values are included in our AI systems. Then there's a word from a sponsor, PECB. Upskill your career with PECB, 15-minute courses on AI, cybersecurity, data protection, auditing, information security. You get CPDs for this. And yeah, you are in a PECB conference right now, so you probably know how to get there. That finishes out with 15 minutes to spare. I want to thank you for your attention, and I'm now open for questions for the remainder of the time.
Thank you, Stein. So we've had quite a lot of questions. We will start off with the first one. Someone says, how realistic is it for organizations to fully align AI lifecycle governance with ISO 42000 when most AI models evolve faster than traditional audit cycles defined in standards like ISO 27001?
Yeah, and that's one of the big challenges, you know, and whether it's realistic to implement 42001 or not, well, you may have to look at what parts of 42001 you're going to be implementing. If you look back at the key principles here, let's just have a little look here. If we look at the slide number 8 here, I'm just going to go to that one. Yeah. First of all, there is a management system. The management system, as specified in clauses 4 to 10, is very little specific to technologies. The appendixes and the further beyond clauses 10 are the ones that contain the technology. Now, the key words here is it adds requirement for transparency, accountability, and human oversight. Okay. So the big question here is really here. Can we have transparency in how the AI systems makes these decisions? Can we have accountability as to who make the AI systems, how the AI system learn? Can we exercise oversight? And in that setting, the answer may be no. And if that is the case, we're drifting off what 42001 says. Another important thing is that we have that we should absolutely have. We should really have these here. We should also absolutely have AI-specific controls to prevent bias, to prevent and to have good data governance, and to be able to explain how the AI reached a decision. So yeah, the generic part of 42001, if you don't look into the individual details, can probably survive the rapid expansion of AI systems, but details may have to change at a pace that is much faster than what we are seeing today with the ISO standard. Okay.
Thank you. Another question asks, is it early to make AI take over controls on OT systems, especially if there is a direct connection between the IT and OT? And is AI systems mature enough to do this in context of cybersecurity?
Okay, that's a tough one. This all goes down to risk. Right? The answer to that cannot be a generic one. The answer to that will have to be a risk assessment. And in that risk assessment, you will have to look into specifics as to what the OT system is actually doing. There are some good reasons for AI systems to control OT processes. And some of these good reasons can, for example, be to have increased yield, increased output from the OT system. But there are also some good reasons for not doing so. For example, some processes may, if they go wrong for some reason, actually cause a lot of human damage. I will refer to to the people who were working with AI to figure out how to optimally land a plane with minimum fuel consumption. And the AI system had absolutely no problem solving that, because its challenge was to land it with minimum fuel consumption. So what it did, it crashed it into the ground. Not quite healthy for the people on board. So what I'm saying here is that your risk assessment, especially when it comes to controlling OT processes that can put life and health at risk, you probably need to A, do a thorough risk assessment, B, maybe even slow down the process, and C, really verify that the AI system has a situational awareness, not like the cardboard box that my car caught as some pedestrian I was trying to kill. The system needs to have full situational awareness to be able to take such decisions when it comes to life and health. You can't eliminate parts of the situational awareness, and maybe you, for that reason, will have to resort more to manual processes. But again, down to your risk assessment, that is the key thing.
Thank you, Stein. Another question that was very commonly asked was what practical strategies can be used during internal audits to demonstrate alignment and interoperability between these three standards, especially in complex environments with both IT and OT systems?
Well, today we're already doing combination audits, because 27001, we have 14001, we have 22001. We have all these standards that use the common elements that are the same for 27001 for the clauses 4 to 10. So already today we are doing combination audits, but this is combination audits of the management system in itself. Now, if we are a company is 14001 certified, 27001 certified, and 9001 certified, there is one management system audit of the management system that covers all these disciplines. But then there are specific audits in 9001, in 27001, and 14001, which will audit individual controls. So when it comes to auditing here, the management system, that's more or less figured out. But the individual controls, the 42001 controls, they will have to be specifically audited, and that's where we may be lagging behind. We may be needing more procedures. We may be needing more tools. Quite frankly, and I don't really like to say this here, but quite frankly, we may actually have to revert to using AI tools for the auditing here. So have AI audit AI, well, there are some implications to that, but that may be the only practical approach. But we are facing some challenges here, absolutely. But those challenges are on the AI specific things, not on the management system in itself. Yep.
Another question is regarding AI evolving at very high speed. How can a standard keep up with something changing overnight?
Yeah, the problem, we actually addressed some of these problems here with first of all, effectiveness, integrity, and confidentiality focus on 27001, safety and reliability of 62443, and accountability and transparency. Those are the key things covered by 42001. I'm not sure I can give you an exact answer on how we're going to be able to keep up with this. We need to be focusing very much on asking ourselves specifically what the system does. We may have to resort to extensive testing before we put a system into production. That's just to say. And we have to be humble and say that we don't have all the answers at the moment. But what we must do is we must go out and search for the answer and look into things, develop systems, develop maybe AI systems. But what we cannot do is to just surrender control to AI systems. That is a very slippery and dangerous slope, because at one point we may not be able to take that control back. Did I answer the question, or did I drift off here?
I think you answered the questions, and we'll take a last question. How do we validate and control a process where AI can change its own logic faster than our quality audits can cycle?
Yeah, it's very difficult. You may actually have to limit the AI's self-learning capability, or you have to at least go from self-learning to supervised learning. But there is no simple answer on this one. Things can change very rapidly. The key thing in this is that you have to be in control. Going back again to these key things here. This one, we have to be in control in terms of knowing what the AI system does. Maybe we will have to query the AI system to address the logic it used to arrive at the answer. We are accountable for all our AI systems, and we have to provide human oversight of these systems. How effective that human oversight is, the more the system self-evolves, the less effective this human oversight will be. But there are techniques, there are mechanisms. You can ask the AI systems to specifically map out how it arrived at a given conclusion. But there is no universal answer available for this, unfortunately.
Thank you, Stein. And a lot of people were asking how can they get certified in these standards. Now, I want to inform you that PECB offers a variety of training courses, including IEC 62443, ISO IEC 42001, and ISO IEC 27001, and many, many, many more other courses. To learn more, please contact support@pecb.com, and we will get back to you with more specific information on how you can get certified. Now, once again, I would like to also remind you that the recording of this webinar, along with this presentation slides, will be made available on our website and YouTube channel, and you will be notified accordingly. Additionally, an attestation of webinar completion will be issued within a week to all participants who attended at least 60% of the live session. Now, thank you all for your time and engagement today, and a very special thank you to you, Stein, for delivering such an insightful session. We hope to see you at our upcoming webinars as well. Take care and see you soon.